Well, these are apocalyptic times here in British Columbia. We've had hundreds of forest fires burning. You can see the smoke is quite thick. That hill should be very clear. The sky is just filled with smoke. I have to wear a smoke mask when I'm out here or I get a bad cough. This is how it is in these days. It's August 22nd. I've decided to fire up the geothermal greenhouse, so I've got some greens for at least into December, maybe all winter. So I've taken off the thermal shutters from the south end of the greenhouse. I'm just going to start there for now, very modest aims. I'll plant 5 grow bags with some peas and spinach and lettuce and arugula, the greens that I'll need. And I took those shutters and I put them in the end of a woodshed that I built this summer. And I left one end purpose built for putting these shutters in and a couple other pieces I had that I wanted to store. So there you can see the insulated shutters sitting there, and it will hold all 5 shutters for the greenhouse in that spot. The rest is filled with wood for the winter. And then this end here is a bicycle shed with a stanchion to lock the bicycles to, patio stones on the floor, and I will probably fill that full of wood in the late winter just before everything gets covered with snow as well. So I haven't used this greenhouse all summer. It's been like 35, 40 degrees, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit here, and it's pointless. I mean, my garden is booming despite the smoke. Everything grows well outside. There's really no need to plant anything in the greenhouse at this point. I may do it next summer just to show how a person can garden in extreme heat conditions. Now, the smoke is outside. It's not bad in here. And I have the advantage of the geothermal fan drawing from underground instead of the outside. So it will draw in greenhouse air through these pipes, these 2 pipes here, and then it will come back out here as soon as I turn it on, which will be noisy. And that way I'll be getting circulating clean air instead of smoke while I work away in here. And that's another advantage to geothermal. In forest fire season, you can still have clean air in your greenhouse. Now, if it goes up to 35 and 40 in early September, which it could happen here, this is climate change, nobody knows what will happen, I'll have to turn that fan on with this inlet vent. But if it's smoky, that will bring the smoke in. So I'm not going to do that right now, and it's not that hot outside right now. I don't need to do that. My other strategy is I've got kind of a blackout tarp. It's not a blackout tarp, it's a 40% tarp. So this will reduce the light coming in here, so only 60% comes in, and that will cause some cooling. I just bought it on Amazon. It's a plastic tarp fiber. That'll go up. And then I also bought these, everything's made in China of course, bought these grow bags, which claims you can use them for several seasons. And I'm going to be experimenting with air pruning, so I'll just have those grow bags sitting in a plastic container where I can pour some water and some nutrients in there. But the grow bags themselves will have some manure and some other nutrients themselves, so I don't have to be feeding them all the time, and I can do it more naturally. Anyway, it looks terrible in here. I've got a lot of cleaning up to do. I haven't used it all summer. And this is just what's left over from the winter madness. I grew right until the end of June. Then I harvested everything and put what I could out into the garden. And but now I'm looking forward to using this geothermal as a way to stay out of the smoke and still be able to keep on growing in a more healthy way. So I'll just temperature 75 degrees, about 24 degrees underground there. And I did not have this fan running. That's just passive absorption of heat from this greenhouse. The greenhouse was quite often over 100 degrees in the summertime because I didn't have any fans running or anything thing trying to cool it down. I just let it go to wherever it was going to go. That also kills off some bugs if you let your greenhouse heat up over the summer, I think. But these rocks are the story, and the concrete walls, of course. But the rocks have been absorbing heat all summer long, and when they started out below 60 degrees in May of 2018, they are now at 75 degrees approximately Fahrenheit, or 24 Celsius in August of 2018 with no intervention. That's all passive heat absorbed. And that's a great temperature for growing plants. 75 will cool it off if it gets too hot in here, and keep the plants growing well at night if I can keep 75 degrees coming out of there. We'll see how long it lasts. I'm going to keep a record of it and give you that record so you can see what happens in here as the months progress using this large earth battery for a small greenhouse. So I'm going to get busy cleaning up all this junk and planting a few grow bags and getting things going so I can have stuff going in the fall and into the winter here in Canada. It's August 25th here in Canada. I'm starting to restock my geothermal greenhouse. Now this is a bit counterintuitive, and frankly, don't just go off and do what I'm showing you, because it's experimental. There may be a video in a week or two saying, no, that didn't work, everything died. So as long as you're with me that far, we can keep going. So what I'm thinking is, we're about a week to 2 weeks away from the first frost. So, and it should be about 80 degrees out, but it's like 54 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's cold because of the fire smoke that we had. Warmed up a little bit today. But we had a full moon last night, so the frost could come at any time. Probably not for 2 weeks, but you never know. So what I'm trying to do is, normally with a greenhouse, you grow things, starters, in the spring, then you put them out in the garden. Well, I'm trying to do the reverse. I'm taking some things that were fairly young plants out in the garden that I planted for this purpose and transplanting them back into the greenhouse to keep growing them into the late fall, possibly into the winter, depending on, you know, how much money I'm willing to spend on energy for the lights. But right now I've got enough light. If I can keep the frost off in this greenhouse, and the temperature is warmer, so the plants are going to be happy about that. I'll make sure that they're watered. So what have we got going here? I've got 2 of these 5-gallon planting bags. I've just put seeds in there. These things grow pretty fast. I want them for salads and garnish and things. So I've got winter lettuce. I've grown that before. It's super. It's really dependable. It's very hardy. It could pretty well freeze in here and that stuff will still be alive. Cilantro. It's hard to get fresh cilantro around here, so I'm out in the country. We need to grow some of that. Now these are the ones that I'm doubtful they will make it. They're beans. They're young beans. They haven't even flowered yet. Beans will grow in a greenhouse. They don't have to be pollinated by insects. They're self-pollinating. The reason I'm doubtful they'll survive is because I've got them in such shallow trays. Those trays should probably be 16 inches deep and big for that number of beans. But I'm hoping that that'll give them enough soil to keep them going, and I've got lots of nutrients in there. There's worms in that soil. I know, because I dug it out of a wormy part of my garden for them. We'll see if they make it, if you can transplant them at that age into such small containers. I just don't have room in the greenhouse to put everything in great big containers. It's a very small greenhouse. Now here I've got my peas. Just stuck the seeds in that wet, muddy soil, and then I've got going to tighten up that, but they'll grow all the way up to the top. They did last year, depending again on the amount of light that they get. But these are Lincoln Homesteader peas, the kind that you crack them open. They're not edible pod. I'm hoping to get the actual peas. I just want some fresh treats in the fall and the winter after the frost has come. Now again, experimental. I dug up this tomato plant. I cut away probably at least half of the growth that was on there, because I know I'm chopping away some roots, so it's not going to be able to support the amount of greenery that was on there. You can see there are some tomatoes, including a couple ready to pick, already on there, but there's also flowers, and I'm going to have to either dust them to pollinate them or let some insects in here, and I haven't decided yet. I'll probably dust them as the insects go to sleep for the winter. Right now the only window I've got open is this screened window, because I haven't decided yet about me and insects in the greenhouse yet. These I planted in my last video. There's some regular Grand Rapids green lettuce, some arugula, some spinach, and again, this is kind of an experiment. Those are celery plants that aren't terribly mature yet. You don't have big stalks of celery. You could eat those tiny little stalks, but they're not really ready. And they weren't going to make it before the frost. So, as you can see, I've got some roots sticking out here. I didn't get all the roots properly buried. And the roots were wider than these pots. I should have used much bigger pots. But it's celery, and you know, I just don't have room in the greenhouse to devote great big pots for them. I probably should have put them in these 5-gallon bags. They'd be much happier. But I don't have any more of those bags at the moment, so there they are. That's the celery. We'll see what happens. I'm hoping that this all works out, and the idea of transplanting back into the greenhouse for an extended growing season will work, and I will let you know in coming videos. It's May 20th, 2019 in the Geothermal greenhouse in Canada. Things are just booming here. I'm really pleased with the way this whole greenhouse has turned out. During the past month, we've had cool nights and warm days. I haven't had to run this geothermal fan at all. Just the thermal mass of the gravel and my 2 vertical tubes have been enough to balance the heat beautifully. It was 48 degrees Fahrenheit out last night and 60 degrees here in the greenhouse at its coldest point. That's very nice for these plants, that they don't have any cold stress, especially things like the peppers, which are pretty happy with the way things are going. This is a pepper right here, and as you can see, it's got flowers on it, and it's pretty close to forming some peppers. The green beans, there's a green bean ready to eat, and it's wrapped around by one of these morning glory plants, but I'll have to pick that green bean and eat it. I've got some parsley there. I had this basil up where it was more in the sunlight, and it wasn't that happy with it. Now it looks much better since I just tossed it down on the floor where it's semi-shaded. But most of these plants, about at least a half of them will be going out into the garden in about a week, when it should be relatively frost-free here in Canada. And I'll keep a few plants inside just for the fun of it, and to test out how well they can survive the heat this summer when it goes over 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius. More beans here. So obviously something is coming in my open windows down there to pollinate these things, because even the tomatoes are starting to form a couple of little tomatoes on them. I noticed there was a tomato bulb on one of this early boy tomato plants. There it is right there. There's a little tiny tomato right in there. But yeah, so you can get food right in the greenhouse. I'm having to water them once a day. I have my hose now running right into the greenhouse from outside. I buried it when I built the greenhouse. I've got all this fancy stuff on here because this tap is my fail-safe tap. I don't want to have any leaks in this greenhouse when I'm not here. I turn that off. That totally turns things off. Then these little levers turn on which hose you want to have running, and I've got a multiple head on here because I intend to have several of these misters in the greenhouse. Now that one was like $9.95 or something at the local hardware store, and I found out it's not that great at making mist. It seems to eventually drip down the plants, so I'm going to see if I can get some more professional misters, because when it does get to be 100 degrees, in addition to putting a shade tarp over the top, which just lets in 50% of the light through the roof, and having all my fans running and the geothermal running to cool it, misters are the way to really cool it down and keep your humidity up so your plants are happy. So I'm told by several professional greenhouse operators. So I'm going to go ahead and get them put together. But in general, I just want to report that the place is full of plants. They're all booming. They're starting to fruit, give me food. It's not costing me a dime in electricity, except for I keep this one little cheapo fan running all the time, because you have to have some air circulating all the time, even at night when the windows are closed, so that both oxygen and carbon dioxide get under the leaves when they need to find the gases that they need for photosynthesis. But in general, pretty happy camper here with what this is. This is the glory days, the easy days for a geothermal greenhouse is in the months of April and May, when the temperature inside here is just perfect without any energy being consumed. Hello from the geothermal greenhouse in Canada, and I've got a whole new topic to talk to you about today, and that is greenhouse bugs. I came out about 2 weeks ago and look at some of these plants. I don't think you'll be able to see it on video, but there were like hundreds of little flies flying around. Yeah, you can see them down there. They're right on the underside of this leaf. A whole ton of little flies hanging on. And at certain times of the day they fly all over the place. So they are, it turns out, fungus gnats. And that means that the adult flies that are flying around are not doing any damage, but their larvae inside these pots are eating away at the roots of the plants, and so the plants will not do as well. And that's a serious greenhouse pest. This is something about raising plants in a greenhouse that you just have to be prepared for. You're going to get some insects that you don't get in the outside garden. The off-season lushness of these plants that I had going in here have attracted this pest. 2 years ago I had the spider mite, which turned out to be very difficult to eradicate, and that was actually almost in the winter that struck. And the way that I handled it, as it turned out, all the spider mites were attracted to one particular plant, and so I let them collect on that plant, and then I got the plant out of the greenhouse. And then there were like about 2 leaves on another plant that were starting to develop them, and I did spray a miticide on those 2 leaves, and that managed to contain them. I got sort of my crop out, and then I let the greenhouse go fallow for about a month, so it froze up pretty solid, and they haven't come back this year. But what I have got is these fungus gnats. So I don't want to spray anything in here. I tend to just grab these lettuce leaves and shove them in my mouth, and you know, I'm doing kind of as organic as I can here, so no good to just spray on them. If you were going to spray, it would be pyrethrins, which are difficult to get in Canada now. Pyrethrins are hard on the bees, but they're also bad for some other insect that's beneficial. I can't remember which one, but anyway, I'm not spraying pyrethrum in here. You can see I'm still getting peppers on these plants, but they would probably be doing better and may not do well if I don't do something. So, what to do? Well, I ordered this, which is the grub grenade. It contains 5,000 soldier mites, it says, and that will cover 5,000 square feet. Well, not really if you read, but it will certainly do this small greenhouse. It annihilates fungus gnats, root weevils, springtails, thrips, pupae, and more, and it's actually a predatory soil mite, and the type is a Stratiolaps scimatus. Stratiolaps scimatus, that's the Latin name for what's in this tube. So there's probably some peat or other agent in this tube. It tells you not to shake this violently. You may hurt some of the mites, but what you do have to do is you have to sort of turn it and move it around, because they will have all collected at one end or at the top or at the surface, and you want them fairly evenly distributed. You can even lay it on its side for 10 minutes before you use it. So that's one thing to know. Otherwise, you'd be getting maybe all the mites in the first couple of teaspoons, and then the rest would be very weak. And so that will go after the larvae in the pots. It's supposed to be very good. We'll find out. And then you also want to catch the adult flies so they don't keep making more larvae. And for that, I bought a package of these yellow double-sided sticky cards. And they come with little pegs that you can put in just stick these right in each pot and collect your yellow flies. They're not reusable, but they collect a lot of flies before they're done. What I'm concerned about is I hope they don't also collect bees. I'll find that out, because I do have bees coming in here, and I mean, that's why I have those tomatoes growing on this tomato plant. I want to read you a little bit about this particular predatory mite, and because the fungus gnats are also considered to be mites, so we need something that will go after them. So it says, this came with the package. Stratiolaelaps scymatus is such a versatile and efficacious species of predatory mite. It was first observed and reared by Dr. Dave Gillespie of Agriculture Canada, Agassiz, Fraser Valley, BC, about 30 years ago. The culture was then passed on to Applied Bionomics in North Saanich, BC in the late 1980s, where it was commercialized and is still produced and shipped worldwide today. This predatory mite was formerly known as Hypoaspis miles. Hypoaspis miles. So they've changed the name of it. It's no longer Hypoaspis miles, although you may find that in a Google search. It is Stratiolaelapis scymatus. Anyway, research continues all the time for this amazing species of mite, most recently for controlling the varroa mite, which is the mite invading honeybee colonies, and that's currently underway at Texas A&M by Dr. Juliana Rangel Posada. Feedback from beekeepers who have trialed over the past decade have had mixed results so far, and so that's another possible use for this. I'm going to be using it for fungus gnats. It does note here, you think, well, how am I going to get it to the right spot in the soil? You don't need to worry about that. It says, one of the nicest aspects of using healthy biocontrol for pest control is the lack of application requirements in terms of labor and accuracy. They really will search out the pest, often by smell, and make their own way there, then reproduce and establish where they see fit, usually near the pests, like most animals would. So you just can take a teaspoon or less of these, depending on the size of your planter, put it around the base of the plant, and stand back, and the plant will do the rest. So I'm hoping to bring these back under control. I don't have a lot in the greenhouse right now. These are actually my trial plants for the hot summer season, which is about to come. I've already picked a whole dinner's worth of beans off of my various bean plants in here and eating them. This is parsley. See, I've got peppers going there. That basil is happy down on the floor. I've tried it all over the place. That's where it wants to be, in the partial shade. So that's where it is. And then these peas. My daughter recommended these because they performed well for her in her community garden. They're called Champion of England. Well, they are champion. They went straight for the roof, and then they flowered way up there. So I'm going to need like a step ladder to get my peas. So this isn't a good variety for the greenhouse, although we'll see how heavily they produce. I don't have any peas quite yet, but I would note that this very same variety planted outside is now about 1 foot high. So inside the greenhouse they are about 7 feet high and still climbing. Now you can see up above there I've got a shade tarp on the roof. It got very hot here, up into the 90s even in late May, which is unusual, but everything's unusual now. So I put the shade tarp on, but then it got cool again, and so I really should roll that shade tarp back, which I can do. It's not difficult because the greenhouse is only about 5 feet off the ground. I can reach both sides of it and just pull it back and hold it back with bungee cords and bring it back when I need it. So I'll be doing that probably a little bit later today. Hi there. Well, I've got the greenhouse empty now in August. It's a very hot day, about 96 degrees or Fahrenheit, maybe 34, 35 Celsius. And it's empty because I got an invasion of spider mites for the second time. So this tells me I need to really clean it out and maybe spray some bleach along the walls and repaint in a couple places. Just totally clean it. So everything's out of there and everything went into here in the garden, as I'm about to show you. And then just as this hot weather struck, we were going away for a vacation for 10 days to a nearby lake in the mountains with our family. So I had to set all this up so that it could run by itself and still be alive when we got back. And I did that through this system of timers and hoses. So I've got a total of 6 hoses hooked up here to 2 faucets, and one of them, the red one, is just a watering hose, but the rest are timed out for running. And the way it works is, if you have a big sprinkler running in one part of the garden, you can't have a second sprinkler running during that same time because there isn't enough pressure to really drive it the way I want to. So each of these hose connections has a different time to run. They start at 6:30 in the morning, it runs for half an hour. Another one starts at 7, that one runs actually for an hour. That's my main garden sprinkler. Another one starts at about 8:15, runs for half an hour and does a few odds and ends. And yet another one runs at about 9 o'clock, and it runs that black drip hose that you can see running through these new plants, and that runs through this ground cover thyme that we've got going here over to these sweet peas that are around our porch, and back around here to some lavender, which is actually white. I think I got to fix something in the soil to make it purple. Some more sweet peas and a couple of little odds and ends. So all of that stayed alive while we were away for 10 days in extreme heat. So this homemade irrigation system works very well, providing you have enough hoses. That timer is a Milnor 4 hose timer, and in Canada it cost me $100 Canadian. It's probably about 80 bucks US. And then there's another older model single Milnor timer that I've had for 3 or 4 years now, and it works quite well. There's little batteries in there. You have to be sure to take the batteries out in the fall or they corrode and wreck the unit. And you have to be really sure that you drain it. I drain it for a while, and then I put it where it won't freeze down in our basement, just to make sure that everything's good. And they have kept working, and I do recommend this brand. And also because I found it simple enough to program. If you don't program very often, you forget, 6 months later, how the heck this thing works. They have good instructions, and it's really simple to figure it out, so I'm happy with that. Hello, it's the global greenhouse in the backyard in Canada, and as you can see, there's no plants in here. I expected there would be this summer, but about middle of August, well, early August, I got another infestation of spider mites. That's my second. I decided my operation just wasn't clean enough, so I've taken everything apart for cleaning, and so I'm almost back to what it looked like as I was building the greenhouse. So what I've done here is I've scrubbed the walls with a common scrub brush with hot water, soap, a little bit of bleach in it, and then I've sprayed the floor with one of these little cheapo sprayers, and I sprayed it with a fairly strong amount of bleach went into that, so that's all working its way into the stones. And I also sprayed that into every crook and cranny in the cement wall, wherever there's a spot there that bugs could get in. I sprayed it pretty well, and I've stripped my bench down of any protective plastic and scrubbed it down every surface I can find all the way to the top. Cleaned my windows. There was some black looking moldy stuff on those windows, but it all came off just with a common scrub brush. You can see it here. That will come off. All I got to do is clean it. So I'll be doing this next half first. I'm doing the front half. I'm hoping to get my benches back in place and at least get some seeds started while I do the back half. Now, one talk about this type of flooring. A lot of greenhouses, professional greenhouses, they have a concrete floor that you can, you know, scrub totally clean. And that's a good idea when it comes to pest control. And this is a disadvantage of the geothermal greenhouse with the open gravel pits going down 5 feet that I've got. But I feel that's totally outweighed by the heat that keeps coming up during the colder season and the cool that keeps coming up during the hot season through that gravel. It's stabilized this greenhouse amazingly. So the price I have to pay is I'm going to have to be more on top of my mite control. These are not bugs that you can see and squish and deal with with little traps. These are mites. You need to have a jeweler's loupe is what I use, or some sort of magnifying glass to even see them. But they're there and they're doing damage. You got fungus gnats and spider mites. I've had a little of each. So this is what I'm doing about it. Now I think the real answer for a stone floor like this is a steam cleaner. But the steam cleaners, even a decent one, costs $250. I don't have that $250. A really good one can run up to as much as $1,000, which is way too much to steam this small area. I'll probably eventually get a $250 steam cleaner so I can clean this gravel on a fairly regular basis so there's no mite eggs or other insect eggs going on here. I cleaned down my tube, which goes down 12 feet from there, and it's looking pretty good shape down there. There's not too much life going on. There's no algae at the bottom. It's actually dry at the bottom, and I'm getting pretty good heat exchange out of that. So that's the project, clean up. I'm going to wash all the windows so they're nice and good. I can get the most light I can get. I hope to have, you know, some plants in here by the end of August, and then I'll cruise into the fall with my greens and all the household goodies I got. So it is total cleanup time. Now I removed the materials. I had sand and vermiculite in these beds. Again, I think it's just a bug breeding ground, and in fact I had one of those beds with an attempt at soil heating over in that corner, but I've removed that totally, and I'm going to put in a set of steel adjustable shelves that I purchased for the purpose, and that way I can move my plants up and down. That's my plan anyway. So the soil heating cables did not work. They kept shorting out. They were useless. I took them out. Don't do that. And even these little beds are kind of actually blocking the good stuff coming up from the gravel below. Eventually I'll take this one out. Right now it's holding up my air conditioner and heat pump, so I can't take it out right at the moment. I don't have time. So you can see how dirty this one got. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's a lot of leaves and chips and stuff caught on the screen that I put in there to keep stuff from going down the pipe. So I'll lift that up and clean it up just the way that I've done this one. I do that about twice a year, and that seems to do it. So as I was applying bleach, I had my big fan going up above, and I had a breathing mask on. Not that it would really get to you, but just in case. So you have to be prepared to clean up probably once a year to this level, and I left it for 2.5 years, and that's my bad. It's just I'm busy creating a radio show and doing a lot of other things, so no wonder I eventually got the bugs. I'm hoping this will beat them, but we'll see. That's it for me. Thanks for listening. I'm Alex Smith, host of Radio EcoShock, as broadcast on 100 radio stations in the United States, Canada, the UK, and Australia. Thank you for listening, and thank you for caring about our world.